Well. Seems we're gonna meet another little unknown outsider. Although technically, this guy is not an outsider team member. He's mostly a teen titan, although technically he's 18 this show. So that doesn't necessarily answer my question if he will, well, create a Teen Titan. But I guess we'll take one step at a time as we got 4 episodes of Young Justice Outsiders and this is the first episode of that. Exceptional Human Beings from me, the Angry Anime fan, and the Despair Reviewer. For once, we're actually switching a little bit more to the grown-up side of the story. At least a little bit. Also a subplot about a new character introduced. First of all, we see Silas Stone talking to, Steel. A Superman fanboy, at least in many of the comics books, who has apparently given Silas Stone a very exceptional, powerful technology. And what is that technology? Well, none other than a father box. And doesn't the name Silas Stone ring any bell? Well, yeah, because we're introduced to Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. But that's a story for another day. In this one, we follow, although we still see Brion's frustrated anger about many things. Mostly this episode follows Batman Incorporated, or at least what we are supposed to call them. Batman, Katana, and Metamorpho. Oh yeah, and by the way, we saw Metamorpho in a promo of The Outsiders, and he has yet to really join The Outsiders. It's even in the comics that he will join The Outsiders, as will Katana. However, it's worth noting that we did not see Metamorpho's, explanation here. He just suddenly appeared just like this. And if you ask me, that feels a little bit dull, if you ask me. But Katana is mostly true to her true comics creation, being strong, silent, and very, very silent. Although Metamorpho has a pretty different ability, as he seems to be in a suit of some sort. Either way, they land in Santa Prisca, where Batman managed to overhear a discussion together with Deathstroke, who is indeed revealed to be the new head of the League of Shadows. And also Cassandra Savage is training in the League of Shadows, and not getting special treatment, as Savage was very clear in saying from Lady Shiva. And apparently Markov, who we should probably know is Terra Markov, studied in League of Shadows, but was handed over to Granny for another, use, so to speak. And then, as Batman Incorporated try to escape, then suddenly they are cornered by none other than Bane, who, by the way, I have to say, he looks uglier this season than he did in the previous one of the first season. I mean, he may just be the 52 design, but it's just something about his mask that looks offensive. I mean, I know he always had that mask. I don't know, there's just something about that new design mask I don't like. I don't know what it is though. And apparently Bane has now decided to no longer use his Venom enhancer and is now working for the League of Shadows. It's worth also noting that Batman really gets a nice jab here, as Bane, who by the way are still voiced by Danny Trejo this episode at least, which is very good, saying that no one escapes Santa Prisca. Batman really puts a line except the team, the cult of the Cobra, and blah 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 like that. That's Batman for you. Always getting a jab into certain things. So that is pretty good. But by the way, he mentioned the cult of the Cobra, and my question to that is, are we ever gonna see the cult of the Cobra again? We only saw them one animated episode and then one episode part in the comics. So the fact that he says the cult of the Cobra, are we then gonna acknowledge that the cult of the Cobra is still here? Well, either way, the team of and another side plot is the fact that Will Harper gets a visit from Cheshire, who apparently cannot only return to her daughter, not because she only also feel like it's better if the supervillainy doesn't endanger her. It does seem that there's another situation why Cheshire cannot do what she can do, given to the fact that she still returned to villainy despite everything that happened. Very well suggests there's something more dark into the situation. So, but back on the Santa Prisca, Katana fights against Lady Shiva, while Deathstroke fight against Metamorpho. Oh yeah, Metamorpho is actually voiced by Fred Tatsui, or however you say his name. This in this episode, who is the same guy who voices Deathstroke. Actually, you can even hear that when they're fighting and Deathstroke saying "Ah, bull," that looked like it was painful. And then suddenly Metamorpho talks, then you can actually hear that it is exactly the same voice actor. I guess that means that Metamorpho will not play a very big part after all. I was actually suspecting to have a new voice actor. But it may very well mean that Simon Stagg is dead. I guess we'll see a flashback of his explanation. Or whatever. We'll see. We'll see. But thanks to that, but Batman managed to use the distraction and they get off with the island with some information of it all. But the subplot ends that Victor Stone, who we saw this episode, is doing football and wanted his dad to come, but his dad was too occupied with work. In the end, he scored a touchdown and was crowned a hero to the team. But we all know Victor Stone's fate, don't we? That's basically this episode. I mean, I was glad that we saw a little bit of the grown-up side, Batman doing his thing, and Batman was still Batman, badass and pretty cool, even though he is kind of a jerk right now. But that's always how Batman has been. The foreshadowing that there is really some very dark going on in the Markovin case is really creeping in here. As well as the fact that I'm surprised that Batman actually managed to get intel on Deathstroke and Lady Shiva's talk. Or maybe was all of that planned? I mean, we'll see. I'm glad we saw Metamorpho, but I'm not so very glad that he's not as an important character as I thought he was. In Katana, are we ever gonna hear her talk? Given comic book history, probably not. So, what else is there? Well, the outsider part of Abrion still losing his fumes, and the Forager still waiting to create his exoskeleton is there, but it's not really that important. Just training, so to speak. But either way, I liked it. A 7 out of 10 for me. So give me your thoughts if you have any.